In the last episode, I talked about the second entry in the Tenkaichi series and how big an upgrade it was compared to its predecessor, along with the many quality of life changes that it made in terms of combat, presentation, and content. Honestly, it was great. Now, if you are interested in seeing that video, I got the link right above the video, so check that out if you will. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, it's time we have a dialogue about Tenkaichi 3. Oh boy, where do I start? A lot of anime fans, a lot of Dragon Ball fans will view this game in particular to be genuinely one of the greatest Dragon Ball games to ever exist. The reception for this game ranges from average to very positive, both from game journalists and fans alike, including myself. The community as a whole put this game at a very high pedestal, hell, even higher than Tenkaichi 2. And growing up, I was always curious, why was that the case? You know, why there was such a huge ratio of people just liking Tenkaichi 3. And it could be a multitude of reasons. It could be the reenactment of classic fights from the source material. It could be the fact that this was a lot of people's first Dragon Ball game. It could be because of the roster, because this was technically, at the time, one of the biggest character rosters in a fighting game. And the fan service was through the roof, showing a lot of representation towards OG Dragon Ball, Z, and GT, and even the movies. It could be the content, or it could just be the presentation of the music. There's a lot of factors that can go into this. As tradition in the Tenkaichi series, Tenkaichi 3, or Sparking Mentor, was released 1 year after Tenkaichi 2 for both the PS2 and the Wii. And oh boy, we got a lot of interesting additions to this game. We got the total of 161 characters in this roster. We got the great ape representation. Yes, we got great apes that were never before seen in the Dragon Ball anime or the manga in general. You guys remember Fasha? I haven't seen that shit before in my life, but I'm not gonna question it. We even got characters that were region locked from BT2. And we got some OG Dragon Ball representation. We got Chi-Chi, we got General Blue, we even got Nam. I love some Nam. We got one additional GT character, and we got some additional characters from Z, such as Future Gohan. Yes, non-canon Gohan, because this one for some reason still has 2 arms. We got King Vegeta, and again, we got Father, which is Fasha. I'm gonna continue to slander her. Hell, you even got Ariel from the Dr. Slump series. Will you technically count her as a guest character? I mean, she started out in Dr. Slump, but she was also in OG Dragon Ball during the Red Ribbon Army saga, so I digress. We even got the introduction of multiple Gokus and Vegetas and Piccolos from different eras. We got early Goku. We even got mid Goku. And they all have their different movesets, specials, and transformations. We even got new stages, and primarily from OG Dragon Ball, like the Musa Tower, Mount Pazu, and we got the introduction of Night Sages.
At night.
Specifically, certain characters, obviously Saiyans, can transform to great apes. This is also the sequel that introduces battle replays. And guess what? We got the first introduction of online play. If you got the Wii version back in the day, the PlayStation version didn't get shit. We did get disc fusions though. We even got new system mechanics, reworks, and even some removed mechanics that hurt my heart a little bit. And we got a totally reworked story mode that the community is a little divided upon. But in short, we got quite a bit to go over. By the way, if you guys enjoy the content that I've been making recently, I highly suggest you leaving a like and subscribing to the channel.
Check out my moves.
Alrighty, if we're going to talk about the gameplay of Tenkaichi 3, I think we need to address both the new and removed changes, because from a gameplay perspective, these two function a lot more differently than you think. You see, Tenkaichi has always been a game that pushes movement, mixing up your opponent, and just hitting your opponent from the back for high damage. Yes, that sounds crazy, but I mean, that's literally the get-go for this game. Now, when I cover Tenkaichi 2, I always look at the game as, at least from a gameplay standpoint, a very offensive, aggression, and mix-up heavy game. You have a lot of feint cancels, you have the introduction of move cancels, and you have melee momentum in the game. Now, I'll admit, as much as I really love the offense in the gameplay, for Tenkaichi 2, this game was also very volatile and very explosive for a lot of various reasons. You see, rush supers in Tenkaichi 2 were unblockable, and the only way you were able to block those set attacks is through using power guard. Infinites were also a thing in this game. Now, one infinite that I didn't really cover too much in Tenkaichi 2 were the ground pound infinites, where pretty much if you're at a grounded state, if you throw any type of rush attack, you will be at an air state. Throw a certain amount of rush attacks and then descend cancel right at a specific time, and pretty much rinse and repeat that over and over. And if you do it from the back, they can't do anything about it. And the problem with that was, in order for you to do a super counter in Tenkaichi 2, it has to be in front of you, not behind you. So if you were to get hit from the back, you would just have to hold it. That combined with also having to block in 5 different directions. Yeah, that's a lot. And if you take all these factors in consideration, Tenkaichi 2 was definitely a hard game to adapt to. Now, when we go to Tenkaichi 3, some things are still for the most part the same. It's still a mix-up heavy game. However, offense has been toned down a bit and adjusted in some areas, while introducing both new defensive options and refine some of the movement mechanics in the game. Now let's talk about things that either have been removed or changed. Guarding either left or right has been removed, so it's just up, neutral, and down to guard. Power guarding has been removed. Move cancels and feints have been removed. Oh my god, I'm trying not to cry. The smash meter in the map gauge has also been removed. Rush supers, or any super that revolves any type of physical contact, is no longer unblockable. Oh, thank god. And step-ins are no longer invincible towards grabs. And infinites are a lot less common in the game, so some of the infinites that are in BT2 are no longer in BT3. Now, despite all of those removed changes, there's still some good additions to this game. We have blast combos, which are essentially just blast follows that you can do during sparking. We got the introduction of Rush Key Wave and its follow-ups. Rolling Hammer still function the same and it's still exclusive to certain characters, but now you can tie rush-ins into Rolling Hammers, so that's a plus. We also got perfect smashes. We also got the introduction of technically auto combos called rush finish, when you pretty much just mash the square button. Movement in general just feels a lot more responsive and smoother to operate, and it just feels super good to use. Dash cancels, instant homing dashes, and even flanking in general just feels a lot more responsive. Hyperspeed movement feels a lot better to use, plus now you can use it while you're dashing. This is also the introduction of Z Burst Dash, which is pretty much a new homing dash that allows you to get behind your opponent faster. Z searches and lock on just feels a lot more responsive now. And in terms of defense, we got the introduction of Sonic Sway, which is pretty much a stance that activates during rush attacks. We got Emergency Blaster Wave, which is just a new reversal option that sacrifices your health. Just think about it as another combo breaker tool. Z counters or super counters, if you play Sparking Zero, have been buffed to where now you can use it from both the front, the back, or the sides. And they're still hard as hell to pull off in this game. And now I gotta talk about the other Z counter, which in this case we're just gonna call it Vanish counters or just Vanish Ward. This mechanic activates when someone invades a Vanish tag or someone hits a Z counter. Once that occurs, there's a whole new mini game that's been introduced. During this mini game, when you vanish, it costs 1 bar of key, and once everybody's bar of key resets, if they keep doing the vanishes, characters just reset to neutral. It's it. Now you can also do a super counter during this mini game, which is the harder option, but you don't waste any meter. Now in concept, I get why they add this mechanic, because this definitely adds the Dragon Ball feel to it. I'll be completely honest, I am not a fan of this mechanic personally. I think it's too gimmicky. Well, it's good. It's cool to do it the first few times, but after a while it just gets annoying.
I'll win!
For the presentation, it's not a drastic upgrade, but it's still some small visual improvements in terms of animation and just small texture improvements. Now, as for the new intro for Tenkaichi 3, this is the chef's kiss in terms of animation and the music choice. Super Survivor, one of my favorite openings in the Dragon Ball game. Now, as for the UI and the aesthetic of the game, it's still about the same for the most part, especially when it comes down to the fan service, the atmosphere, and the aesthetic of the game. I feel that the same amount of charm and fan service they put into Tenkaichi 2, they put it into 3. The menus still pop out, and they still have different themes and references from certain events in the series. And as for the music, oh, yeah, it's still pretty good. Now, one thing that I immediately noticed when I was playing through Tenkaichi 3 was that Takanori, the composer for Tenkaichi 2, was replaced by Toshiyuki Kishi. And if you guys may or may not know, he is the music composer behind Tenkaichi 3 and Raging Blast 1. And the biggest thing that I've noticed throughout the entire soundtrack, it is a lot more rock oriented this time around, which isn't a bad thing. It's still great, but it doesn't hit the same as T2 for me, at least. Still great, and trust me, there are definitely some memorable songs like the Mentor, Power Scale, Dynamic Battle, and especially Evolution. That's the best soundtrack in the game, and I will fight you for it. I found the soundtrack for this game to be pretty good and memorable, but I am going to miss the variety and experimentation that Takanori provided in the previous game.
I challenge you, Goten!
Next, let's go over the content of Tenkaichi 3, starting with Dragon History Mode. The mode that people tend to have a weird love or hate relationship with. As per installment, you know we get the sagas from both Z, GT, the movies, the What If sagas, and we got some love from OG Dragon Ball, some more arcs that they cover, which I do appreciate as an OG Dragon Ball fan. And the best way I can describe the story mode for BT3 is that they were a lot more ambitious with this one. So they essentially added more cutscenes and storytelling that plays throughout the beginning, middle, and the end of fights now. You will actually see characters banter with one another in between fights. Now there are certain interactions in the fights where you're able to hit the R3 button, which can lead to different things within certain fights within the story. So this can lead to swapping the character, a beam clash, a rush clash, or even like a one-hit kill in some cases, or like a special cutscene will occur. You are essentially recreating events from the manga and anime almost one-to-one. I love that aspect very much. I think it was cool when they do it. Hell, even like, let's say for example in the Saiyan saga, the fight against Nappa where Tien, Chaozu, and most of the Z fighters were struggling to fight against that character, they actually emphasized that by you doing very little damage to the character. In practice, it can be a little annoying at times, but like, yeah, there will be fights where you actually have to lose, and some of those fights will actually feel impossible to go through. All of these really emulate the feel of a lot of these iconic Dragon Ball fights. Now, I'll admit this story mode does have some flaws, and some people may nitpick, and some may even say this story mode kind of sucks in some ways. There are some small to major fights that were cut off in BT3, like the Gohan and Gotenks fight against Super Buu, 17 versus Piccolo. It doesn't really bother me that much, but it was something that I noticed in the story mode, and I could see why, you know, some people feel a little bit mixed on it. That and the exploration and RPG elements that were in Tenkaichi 2 story mode are no longer a thing in this mode. Next, let's talk about Ultimate Battle, which, in my opinion at least, I think this is the best one in the series, and I'm gonna tell you why. Let's start with Sim Dragon. Personally, I think this mode is very underrated, and not a lot of people talk about it, but this is essentially just a battle simulator where your goal is to get as many points as possible within 7 battles, and during those 7 battles, you got 10 days to train until the next match. Essentially, think of it as a roguelike, if you will. You have these different options to where you can either train, go exploring, and just build your character up each day for the next fight to come. And you can essentially choose how you want to go about your day. For example, training can increase your attack or your defense, and there may be a chance where it actually shoots you in the foot and you don't get anything. It's kind of weird. There's a little bit of RNG into it. Now, in terms of exploring, you get some options there. You know, there's some mini games that you can play to increase your stats. There's points that you can spend for possibly getting fortune telling, predicting what could happen the next day if you do this set task, or say you just want to chill out and rest up on your health, you can take a sensu bean. However, when you do rest, you do lose some of your stats. Not all, but some. But I think this is a cool mode. I had a lot more fun in this mode than I intended. I kind of wish they'd bring it back in the newer games. Next we got mission 100, which is exactly how it sounds. You got over 100 battles that you can go through that have their own themes and conditions. Think about it like the tower system back in BT2. They're not courses anymore. It's not like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. It's just you go to mission 1, you beat this task, boom, it's done. And there is a survival mode, which, I mean, is exactly how it sounds. You just go through a gauntlet of fighters until a set amount are defeated. Simple as that. And if you had the PS2 version of BT3, y'all get to use this fusions, which is you boot up Budokai Tenkaichi 1 or Tenkaichi 2. You get the older modes back. The Dragon Course back in BT2 or the 100 Battle Tower Challenge from BT1. You can go through all that. So technically speaking, if you had the PS2 version of BT3 along with the BT1 and BT2 discs, you will have a lot of content to go through. Something that the PS2 doesn't have, but the Wii does, is net play. In this case, just Dragon Net Battle, which is the online portion of Tenkaichi 3. And you had different modes that you could go through, either do custom battles, normal battles, which was just single battles. You can match up with friends, or you can do rank matches. Of course, playing online isn't really possible anymore because they shut down the servers for net play on the Wii years ago. Nowadays, if you want to play BT3 online, you would just either have to have a PC and just use the Dolphin emulator. Next up, we got Dragon World Tour, which makes a return, except now we have... Wait, why are the tournaments locked? I promise you, as a kid, I was lost to why you weren't able to play specific tournaments, only to find out for some strange reason in BT3 there's a time cycle for tournaments, and only certain tournaments were playable at certain times of the day. And I remember specifically going through my PS2 and just changing the times in order to play specific tournaments, that way I can get the rewards off of it, because you couldn't get money if you did the free version, which has all the other tournaments that you can go through. I don't know why they did it, but it's whatever. On the bright side, we did get 2 new tournaments. You got the Other World tournament, where you just fight stronger variants of different characters in various stages regardless of their archetype. And you have the Yamcha games, where your character will just be chosen at random and the final fight would just be against Yamcha. I'm cool with these 2 tournaments, but please do not ever bring this time cycle stuff back again. Thank you very much. Dual mode is still the same, except now tag battles have been scrapped for DP battles. No, not those type of DP battles, you weirdo. Destruction points was just a system used to balance team battles. So depending on what character you use or how strong they are, and at least in terms of lore, for example, if I use Majin Vegeta, Gogeta, or Kid Buu, those characters will be considered at the high DP points, while if I use characters like Tapion, Videl, or Nom, they'll be on the low end side of things. Evolution Z still functions the same, except now instead of a level up system, you can now customize your character through the Z point system. The more Z points that you transfer to your character, the more items they're able to equip. Now when we go to ultimate training, which essentially just expands upon BT2's training mode by adding a lot more quality of life features for both the training mode and battle training section. In other words, they give you more tips and tricks to how to play the game from beginner to immediate to advanced. And I always like this aspect for Tenkaichi 3 because they actually teach you how to play the game. They are going to teach you absolutely everything, but they're going to give you the baseline of how the game works, and I do appreciate that. And also, I can hop in the training mode and the CPU doesn't want to square with me frame 1. Also, the command list is actually organized now. Oh, thank God. This is a great change. And of course, you are able to summon Shenron if you gather all the 7 Dragon Balls. This can either lead to you unlocking a new character, a new stage, or some items. Next, let's look over the data center. Actually, it still functions the same as before, except now we get the replay feature. Last but not least, we got character reference, which, I mean, for some reason it has its own mode instead of just being the library, but I digress. It pretty much functions the same, except you cannot listen to the soundtrack. Or actually, I take that back, you can, you just gotta go through the options menu, but you can hear Chi-Chi commentate about the cast of characters, which can either be sweet and actually pretty wholesome.
This is a wonderful man who took Goku in and raised him. I sure would like to have met him.
Or just straight up slander.
Yamcha, oh, he was a good for nothing to begin with. He was the worst example for Gohan.
Well, damn, you didn't have to talk to Yamcha like that.
Attack!
Last but not least, I would like to talk about the competitive scene for Tenkaichi 3. Now, before everyone start yelling at me, yes, I'm aware that this game was made with a casual intent in mind. However, just like any other video game that involves any form of competition or PvP, there's always going to be a scene where players will take this game to a whole nother level. And I'm just going to yap about it for a bit. So, the T3 community primarily use the Wii emulator, or the Dolphin emulator in short, and they specifically use a modified European port of the game, mostly due to better resolutions and textures, better performance and less input delay and errors, and just a better net play experience. They also increased the base speed of the game, that way the game can run at 30 frames per second instead of 25, fixing some of the inconsistencies in the load times for the game. That's for the competitive rules for the game. Most of the time when you see a Tenkaichi 3 tournament, you notice they're always in team battles. Specifically, they do 3v3s. They used to stand the time, and their go-to stage is normally the Cell Game Arena. Now, when it comes to team composition, think of it almost like a tag fighter or a team fighter if you play the KOF series. You have your point, which you would just use one of your faster characters like Ariel, Kid Buu, Fighting Trunks, or Perfect Form Cell. Now, for your second character or your battery, this would be your key dependent character, so someone like Super 17, Regular 17, or Base Vegito. And as for your anchor or your third character, they're normally the character with the high health or the character that has a good amount of defensive properties. Mostly characters like Broly, SSJ4 Gogeta, or honestly any Vegito. Now, in terms of the advanced techniques that people use in competitive Tenkaichi 3, this when things get interesting, such as dash cancels, ground dashes, flanking, dash key flanking, and during combos you will even see instant dragon dash cancels and back maneuvering. So during any hard knockdowns, throws, or giant throws, you can pretty much move behind the opponent and stop their animation. And when it comes to offense, you will see a lot of safe offensive options like people throwing key blasts, throws, blaster waves, ki cannons, and flying kicks during their rush techniques. You'll see them use those tools for offense and pressure. Now there's also safe stepping options like blaster wave and ki cannon. And there's also rush resets. It's pretty much you just delaying your rush attacks long enough to where you can just reset your rush combo. There's also wall combos, aka wall bounces, and negative ones. So there are certain characters that have negative ones for their supers. Now, negative ones are pretty much just combo setups that prevent the player from teleporting or vanishing from a super. It's kind of busted. Characters specifically like Cell and Android 17 have this ability. In terms of defense, you will see a lot of players using Explosive Wave and Android Barrier. It only costs one skill count, is cheap, is pretty good to use. You'll sometimes see them use Wild Sense and After Image, but this is normally like the go-to reversal option a lot of the time. And you will sometimes see people use Emergency Blaster Wave, but a lot of times it's a bit of a risk. And of course you will still see people use Vanish and Z counters during defensive play as well. Now, the characters that you will often see that I do want to talk about are 17, Perfect Form Cell, and Fighting Trunks. One of my favorite characters I love seeing and honestly playing in this game is Android 17. Since he's an android, he can passively charge ki at a pretty decent rate. He has fast mobility, a good amount of rush techniques. His full power energy ball is so fast and consistent. Oh my gosh, this tool is pretty much your go-to for hit confirms, and it has negative ones. And if you have full sign, which is a passive that pretty much buffs 17's damage, you can get like at least 10k per hit. And you also have Android Barrier, which is a really solid defensive tool. Now when it comes to Perfect Form Cell, similar to Android 17, he has fast movement and really good damage. However, for his defensive options, he has both After Image and Explosive Wave. Alongside that, you have Barrage Death Beam, aka this is another super that involves negative ones. He can use this tool either via combo or a setup, and once you get hit by this, good luck getting out, because it's going to be very difficult for you to vanish out. As for fighting Trunks, see a lot of people use Super Trunks at the start and de-transform, but why is that the case? You see, when you use Super Trunks, he gains 1 extra bar of ki. That's why a lot of times people pick him at the start and de-transform. Now, as for base Trunks as a whole, he has fast melee damage, he has safe rush routes, along with that he has explosive wave and wild sense, and those factors alone what makes these 3 characters really strong and used often in high level play. And for me at least, I find it pretty interesting to watch. And it's almost, again, similar to Tenkaichi 2, watching competitive scene for these games really open your eyes to stuff that you never would have thought existed. And just to summarize my thoughts, even as an adult, I really enjoy Tenkaichi 3. I don't enjoy it as much as Tenkaichi 2, but I do like the fan service, the big roster, and the added refined mechanics to the game. And just playing and going over this game from both a casual and competitive perspective, it was just a really fun time, man, and I'm glad I got the chance to play this game again. And I also just want to give a shout out to Just Solid, Grandmaster Hawk, Aeronage, Creative Chaos, Paige, and the rest of the BT3 community for helping me out with this project. I had a really good time making this.